All right, all right, all right. Good morning, Jesse Brown. What is up? Hello, my friends. Yeah, it is another Manic Monday here on Spaceship Earth, which means it is time yet again for This Week in Space. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a astrologer, tarot reader, mental health counselor. I like to show up every single Monday and tell you what's going down in the celestial spheres to give you a little heads up on the astro weather for the week, letting you know how to show up, what to prepare for, what to expect. And we try and take this lightly. I don't think you should necessarily change your plans so much, but it's always good to have information and sort of context to understand what we're dealing with. Because, Lord, we're dealing with a lot these days, it seems like. Yeah. Before we jump into it, just a heads up, a new episode of the Melee Report just dropped, going out for the Leo full moon, which occurred last night. Good morning, Gina Maria. And never fear, I will bring you a great week. I don't know if the space is gonna go along with that, but this is gonna be a great report, or at least I'm gonna do the best that I can. Yeah, the Melee Report, which is my astrology-themed radio show, which brings you all the astro weather you never thought you needed, set to all the music you never thought you would hear. That came out yesterday. You can find that on my SoundCloud under Camp Wizard Camp. I'll put another link in my stories on Instagram. I'll put a link in the show notes on all the other platforms that I'd be doing. And if you've never tuned in, it's pretty dang good. It's very much like this, but less talk, more rock. And so you can check that out at your leisure. Good morning. So we're looking at oh yeah, a couple more announcements. I'm going to be co-facilitating a retreat in Delphi in Greece in May. I believe that begins May 18th and runs for about a week. If you are interested in that, we are going to be looking at oracular dreams, dream mysteries, going through some mythology. I'll be doing some astrology. It's going to be awesome. So I hope to see you there. If you're interested, you can follow Sarah Jane's Dreaming on Instagram or check out thedreammysteries.org. There's a link in my bio to all that good stuff. And again, for the folks on the YouTubes and the podcast, I'll put a link in the show notes for that. Yeah, that's all the advertisements. And so let's get into this week in space for February the 2nd through February the 8th in the year of our Lord 2026. And so yeah, it's Monday, February the 2nd, which means it's Groundhog's Day. And yeah, good time to watch that movie on repeat. One of my favorites, classic Bill Murray joint. And yeah, so word on the street is the groundhog saw their shadow. So I guess that means it's 16 more weeks of January. So everybody get ready for that. Have fun. And the film Groundhog Day will be playing from now until April. So I also want to talk a little bit about, this Groundhog Day time because it coincides with the cross-quarter holiday of Imbolc, which occurs February 1st through February 2nd. So we're still kind of in the window. I meant to talk about it last week, but there's a lot going on. So I'm gonna give you a little recap. So Imbolc is a liminal time in the wheel of the year. It's the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So we are just crossing that threshold. It is the space between what has already been done and what has not yet to begin. And it's not the beginning of spring, but it's the sort of liminal space between the seasons. And liminal spaces are really powerful because they hold the potential of what could be, all the imagined possibilities. And this is where the energy of life begins to stir deep under the surface of the earth. All of that energy of spring is sort of bubbling and building under the surface of the earth, but we can't quite see it yet. We kind of got to trust it. And this is when we begin to experience the returning of the light as the days begin to get noticeably longer on their march towards the balance of the spring equinox. And Imbolc comes from the Celtic meaning in the belly. And I've kind of been sitting with this concept for a little bit and what it could mean. So, on one level, I think about the seeds that are buried deep underground that are being held in the belly of the earth and starting to kick and shake alive with the kind of first rumblings of the turning of the wheel of the year and the returning of the light. And on another level, we are all still kind of in the belly of winter, awaiting the rebirth of spring and contemplating all the potential and possibilities that may be available for us when the earth wakes up. And on another level, we are all in the belly of these times, being held or digested or transformed. And in reality, I think it's a combination of all of the above. What do you think about when what do you do when you're in the belly of something larger than oneself? And I think this is an eternal question. We can ask Pinocchio or my namesake, Jonah, love him. And Joseph Campbell talks about the story of Jonah and the whale as a catabasis or night sea voyage, where Jonah refuses the call and denies his vocation and was brought into the belly of the whale through which he was reborn. And Joseph Campbell talks about this as a kind of threshold moment in the Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he writes, the idea of the passage of the magical threshold is a transit into a sphere of rebirth, is symbolized in the worldwide womb image of the belly of the whale. The hero, instead of conquering or consolidating the power of the threshold, is swallowed into the unknown and would appear to have died. And Jungian analyst Edward Edinger, who wrote a book about Moby Dick and Jungian analysis of Moby Dick, which is one of my favorite books. I got a thing for whales. And Edinger says, this myth depicts the archetypal theme of a purposeful descent into the maternal womb, the depths of the unconscious, for the purposes of transformation and rebirth. The monster represents unconscious psychic energy in its elemental and undifferentiated state. It is untamed animal energy, not yet available for conscious functioning. The ego is in constant danger of being devoured by the monster, that is, of being possessed by this raw, unredeemed instinctuality. And, both of these sort of speak to this process of being taken in or swallowed up or pulled into the depths of one's psyche, of the unconscious, being held in the belly of something larger than us. And this is a process of transformation and a process of integration, which gives space for the rebirth as we are learning to as we are being metabolized in the belly of something bigger than us, and also learning to metabolize the kind of unconscious parts or the things that are being drawn to the surface. So it is in the belly of the earth, in the belly of the whale, the beast, in the belly of the times, or in the womb of the world that we are transformed and reborn. The stage of development and a gathering of strength. And this is where we find ourselves now at this threshold moment, in this turning of the wheel, in the belly being digested and metabolized and transformed, just as we are all working in our own ways to digest and metabolize the experience of the past 31 days or past few months or past few years, the experience of kind of living at the edge of history in these unprecedented times. This is a threshold moment just after the Leo full moon. And the next lunation will be a partial solar eclipse on the Aquarius new moon, which occurs on February the 17th. And that's the day of the Chinese New Year and the start of the year of the fire horse, which seems, I don't know very much about Chinese astrology, but the little bits that I have read, it seems pretty tumultuous. Um, And I'm looking forward to learning more about that so that I can share that with you folks. And then 3 days later, on February the 20th, Saturn and Neptune will be conjunct at 0 degrees of Aries. And so all of these events signal big changes ahead. And now that we find ourselves in the belly of the world, in the belly of these times, these challenging times, this is a space for reflection and the gathering of energy to assist us to heed the call, whenever, whatever that might look like. And this will look different for each of us individually. And to cross that threshold as it is offered to us, is going to look different for each of us. But like the seeds beginning to stir to life in the belly of the earth, this is a time of gathering strength and energy, as well as setting intention and beginning to weave the vision of what we would look like it to look like on the other side once we are through the threshold, once we are reborn from this belly that we are held in and kind of regurgitated out and brought back up to dry land. One more thing that I want to mention about Imbolc before I move on to the astrology of the week. So this cross-quarter day honors the Celtic goddess Brigid, who's the goddess of healers, poets, smiths, childbirth, and inspiration. She's also a goddess of fire and the hearth and a patron of warfare. As a goddess of fire, Brigid is connected with both the smith's forge and the hearth fire of the home. This is the fire that we return to, the hearth fire, the central fire of the home that holds us and cooks our food and warms our house, and where the family gathers around to tell the tales of their day. And it is the fire of the forge that does the work, that softens what is rigid and allows it to be reshaped and sharpened and refined. This is the fire of creativity that allows us to transform our rigid reality and reshape our experience based on our imagination and creative potential. So with this threshold moment, this turning of the wheel, we can consider how we are tending these fires in our lives. The hearth that lives in our home and also in our hearts, which is a sense of secure attachment and our ability to return back to that place of safety and warmth within ourselves. And the fire of the forge, that creative drive that pulls us into life and that allows us to forge ahead and to form our lives based on our creative imagination and the potential that we can create. So in these coming weeks, as the world begins to shift a bit on its axis, consider how you are feeding and tending these fires for yourself, and how you are able to offer this fire as warmth and guidance to those you meet along the treacherous path that we are all walking these days. So anyway, let's jump into the actual astrology of the week. So today, Monday, February the 2nd, Groundhog Day. We have Mercury in Aquarius, sextile Chiron in Aries. This is going down at 23 degrees and 3 arc minutes. Let me go ahead and share my screen with the chart for the folks on the YouTube. I'm trying this out because somebody made a comment in the comment section asking for like some visual reference, and let's see how this goes. And folks at home, if this isn't working for you, let me know, or if it is, let me know. All right. And yeah, that'll do. So this week, well, let me just go back over here. So we can see, for the folks on the YouTube, we can see Mercury over here at 23 degrees of Aquarius, making a sextile to Chiron over there at 23 degrees of Aries. So little reference point there. So this week, both Mercury and Venus in Aquarius are coming in to form a sextile with Chiron and Aries. This is a moment of integration. Sextile is a harmonious aspect, a little easeful aspect that can bring collaboration and hopefully some integration. And this follows the squares that both Mercury and Venus made to Chiron when those personal planets were in the third decan of Capricorn. And those squares occurred on January 11th and 12th, which feels like 9 weeks ago. But, if you can think back to what was coming up for you at that time, this sextile is kind of an integration point for whatever was being activated. And I think about this sextile as, a way of accessing the medicine that was sort of begun and started brewing under the hard aspect of the square to Chiron. And now that medicine is ready to be used. Now we are finding ways to integrate some of the core wounds that may have been stirred up during the Mercury and Venus's squares to Chiron. We are perhaps gaining access to these medicines that were being prepared under the surface, in the back of our minds, in the unconscious, and the things that we have been sitting with, and whatever got activated around mid-January. And so with the sextile to Chiron this week, we can take some time to tune in and see what medicine is available for us in this moment, what has been brewing, what has been stirring. So let's consider what this medicine could look like. And since Mercury is making this sextile today on Monday, we'll stick with the messenger god, and we'll consider Venus in a moment when we get to Wednesday, when Venus perfects that sextile. And so the wound with Chiron and Mercury can look like not feeling smart enough, or feeling like we can't communicate what we want to say. And this is a feeling of not being heard, which can be really painful. And I think it is something that maybe we're all feeling on a collective level at this moment, with so much injustice and oppression happening in the world, and the feeling like our calls for change and our shouts of rage are being ignored on a systemic level. So where is the medicine in this? And kind of what comes to mind is, when one form of communication falls on deaf ears, is perhaps important to get creative and innovative. Again, Mercury is in Aquarius, which does some out of the box thinking, and this allows us to work to find new ways of communicating what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. And I don't quite know what this would look like on a national scale, or how to do that on a global scale, but I think it's manageable to work on in our personal lives and in our immediate sphere. And we can consider if we are thinking and speaking from a place of the Chiron wound, and to consider what it would look like. Just imagine what it would look like to communicate from a place of wholeness and from a healed place. Not from a place of dysregulation or overwhelm, but if we can imagine ourselves kind of grounded, present, whole, together, healed, and then communicate from that place. And it might be a little like fake it till you make it, you know? And the other wound that I can think of with Mercury and Chiron is negative self-talk, the inner critic that cuts us down or tells us to shut up, the inner voice that responds with cruelty when it thinks we have fucked up. We can consider what medicine we can offer this harsh inner critic. Oftentimes, this part is just trying to protect us and prevent us from making mistakes or getting in trouble or going astray, which is great, but does it need to be so dang mean about it? You know what I'm saying? The medicine for this, I think, is self-compassion. And Francis Weller, I know I said that I wouldn't reference him anymore, but damn, I love that book. And yeah, it hits a lot of things. So Francis Weller in The Absence of the Ordinary, sorry. um, he writes that self-compassion arises from the fertile ground of belonging. Belonging confers a feeling of worth and value, which in turn filters into our whole being like a blessing. This gently translates into a relationship with oneself that is respectful and caring. And like, damn, that's revolutionary, right? Like, to have a respectful and caring relationship with oneself. Like, I don't know. I think that is a lifetime practice, because my inner critic can be like pretty cruel. But I think it is important to consider the ways that we might be able to have a relationship with ourselves that are respectful and caring. He goes on to say, it is particularly challenging to cultivate a feeling of compassion for oneself in an atmosphere of self-judgment. And, Chiron's core wound is one of belonging. He was abandoned by his father, Saturn, and his mother, Philyra. He doesn't belong with the gods on Olympus, nor with the centaurs in the fields and forests. He is gotta restart this program. He lives alone in a cave and is just sort of like in there by himself, making his medicines, teaching people to be heroes, and is like pretty much a loner doing his own thing, which is like cool and all, but we are social beings and centaurs are pack animals. And so, Chiron carries this wound of rejection and not feeling that he doesn't belong. And let me just scroll down to where I'm supposed to be. Uh, ah, almost there. Um, so, all right. So, um, and Chiron, in his like solitary cave doing his thing, has a sense of being cut off and of not fitting in, which I think is protective, right? Like, I don't need you, I don't need this, like I'm good on my own. This like sense of self-reliance is protective. And it like, covers up the wound, but it's also the wound. And this wound shows up in self-judgment and negative self-talk. And when Chiron's wound gets activated, homeboy just like, wallows and thrashes, and it doesn't, I think the like separation or the like protection around the wound doesn't actually heal it. It just like holds it in a static place. And when it gets activated, it comes alive and becomes like pretty painful. And so Weller goes on to say, no part of us relates in a state of judgment. The overly critical mind creates a state of, no part of us relaxes in a state of judgment. The overly critical mind creates a state of contraction, whereas compassion softens and makes possible a state of beginning, a fresh and unshaped ripeness. So, how do we practice compassion with ourselves? I think this is an eternal question. We can start by considering how we would treat somebody we love, a pet, a friend, a partner, a child. And I don't know about you, but I would never treat another living being the way that I treat myself. That maybe that's just me. And perhaps I could extend the same kindness and patience and understanding to myself that I offer freely to others in my life. I think another way is the practice of turning towards instead of rejecting or shaming those parts of ourselves. How can we embrace and care for them? How can we be with them and have patience with them? How can we hold and just allow them? And what is it like to make space and listen to these parts of ourselves instead of trying to cut them down or push them away or tell them to shut up? And I think a third way of practicing the medicine of self-compassion is creating a felt sense of belonging. We can consider the hearth fire that talked about at the beginning, that we are tending in ourselves, the votive that we keep in our hearts for Bridget or Hestia, and the fire that we keep in our home, fire that burns in our soul. And this is the hearth fire that we can return to, the place that we always belong in, is the self that we always belong with. And we can imagine those we love and those who love us gathered around this hearth fire as a way of softening that sense of negative self-talk and coming into a deeper sense of belonging with ourselves, which in turn allows us to feel into a sense of belonging in the world. This brings us to Tuesday, February the 3rd, We have Uranus stationing direct in Taurus at 27 degrees and 27 arc minutes. And so let me just move this along for the folks on YouTube. So right there, we got Uranus, the very edge of Taurus, 27 degrees, 27 arc minutes, stationing direct, and that will happen a little later in the day. Let me see here. There we go. That occurs at 7:33 in the PM Mountain Time. So set your watches for that, my friends. So, little backstory. Uranus stationed retrograde on September the 5th, 2025, at 1 degree and 27 arc minutes of Gemini. Uranus will re-enter Gemini on April the 25th of 2026, and then they will remain there until 2032, 2033. So Uranus and Taurus, I think about is a revolution in money. Taurus is kind of gathering the things that we value and holding on to them. And Uranus comes in and sort of flips the table. And so check this out. When Uranus entered Taurus in 2018, there is recorded 2,208 billionaires in the world. And according to the 2018 Forbes World's Billionaire List, these individuals had a combined net worth of 9.1 trillion, with the average net worth of these billionaires being 4.1 billion. As Uranus exits Taurus, key 2026 data reports indicate that there are 3,030 billionaires in the world as of early 2026, with a combined wealth of approximately $16 trillion, which is an increase of 800 people with billionaire status, holding almost double the wealth than in 2018 when Uranus went into Taurus. So just sit with that for a moment. And I think this is one of the ways that Uranus has created changes in Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. And as such, Taurus is really trying to identify and hold on to what it values. And Uranus here has amassed a ton of wealth for a very small amount of people. And these folks are doing everything that they can to hold on to this wealth for dear life. This has upset the balance of the social order as well as the ecological balance of the planet. And I think the consolidation of wealth in the hands of the 1% is really radicalizing people as the pressures of daily life continue to increase and things become more and more unhinged and wages continue to stagnate. And the powers that be have tried to scapegoat everybody from trans athletes to immigrants to Palestinians and Muslims to try and distract from the fact that is the consolidation of a massive amount of wealth in the hands of a greedy few, which has thrown life out of balance and is making survival difficult and thriving nearly impossible. And so Uranus and Taurus is like a fault line that is opening up, which is reshaping landscapes, creating mountain ranges, and causing continental drift. As Uranus changes direction and begins to move forward, two things happen. First, that internalized energy that has been seeking or needing change begins to move to the surface and it becomes more outward and more visible. And this could look like the work that each individual has been doing within themselves at a conscious or subconscious level, which is now going to become more externalized, and we will be able to see a more outward manifestation of the changes that have been brewing under the surface. This can also look like the collective's need for change, the frustration that has been bubbling up under the surface with the injustice and inequality and repression that is incubated and pressurized in the collective's need for change and a need for disruption to the status quo. Uranus seeks to break down old forms. And so something innovative and new can take its place. And again, with Uranus moving retrograde from September until now, that energy has been kind of internalized. And now that Uranus is direct, that need to tear down what is old and stagnant and stale is going to become more externalized and possibly much more apparent in the collective. The other thing that happens with Uranus stationing direct is they begin their inexorable march towards Gemini. And we got a little preview of what that looked like from July 7th until November 7th of last year, which was Uranus's first little dip into the mutable air sign of Gemini. But come April 25th of this year, Uranus will be committed to the bit, and they'll spend the next 7 years revolutionizing the way that we think and speak, and the ways that we access, share, and process and communicate information, but also change the way that we consider binaries. Uranus in Gemini thinks outside of the box, like way, 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 way outside the box. And it will force us to reconsider and revolutionize any binary system, which may lead to fragmentation or recombination, and probably a mixture of the two, with some very unforeseen secret third thing thrown in there just for fun. And always with Uranus, the rule of thumb is to expect the unexpected. So only time will tell. But any way you slice it, it's probably going to be pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. Which moves us to Wednesday, February the 4th. We have Venus in Aquarius, sextile Chiron in Aries at 23 degrees and 3 arc minutes. Let me throw that up on the chart. Um, okay, we have. There we go. That's how this works. Okay, we have Venus over there at 23 degrees, forming this sextile to Chiron at 23 degrees. Okay, so we talked about the medicine for Mercury sextile Chiron. So what is the medicine for Venus here? What is the relational medicine that helps to heal the wound of disconnection or rejection and the sense of abandonment that Chiron carries with them? And so, as we learn, self-compassion is the perhaps the what Mercury gets to learn in their sextile to Chiron. And perhaps compassion is also the medicine for Venus. Compassion for all the unloved parts of ourselves, the parts that feel rejected or abandoned, as well as compassion for others that we come in contact with. And in considering this, I was thinking about the Buddhist practice of metta, which is a practice of loving kindness, which helps us to access some of the medicine that has been brewing under the surface for the past few weeks, or can help us. And so metta practice involves offering loving kindness to oneself and then to others. You can do this in meditation, you can do it in your mind, you can do it when you're walking down the street. And the way this practice works is we start with the self, and we turn our attention inward with gentle compassion and saying phrases like, may I live at ease, may I be at peace, or may I be safe, healthy, and happy. Any phrase that works for you. And then next, we move on to sending loving kindness to somebody that we love, a friend, a partner, or to a teacher or a mentor. We bring their image to mind and offer phrases of loving kindness. May they be at peace. May they be at ease. May they be safe, healthy, and happy. And then next, we move on to a neutral person, somebody that you see on the bus or in the coffee shop, somebody that we don't really know and that we don't feel any type of way about, and we offer this individual loving kindness. And then next, we turn our attention to a difficult person, somebody that we have static with. And maybe don't start by picking out, somebody that you absolutely hate. That's something to work up to. And I think being able to offer metta to somebody that we despise is really powerful, but like maybe don't start there. Just like somebody that you're like, oh, that person's so annoying, and then you hold them in your mind and you offer them loving kindness. May they be at peace. May they be at ease. May they be filled with loving kindness. And then lastly, we do this for all beings everywhere. And we offer loving kindness to them without exception. May all beings everywhere without exception, may they be at peace and filled with joy. And this practice helps us to cultivate that sense of compassion in our lives, for ourselves, and for others. And like any practice, it kind of builds on itself. To do it once is great. To do it, 100 times, we really start to like get into the field of compassion. And this is one way to access the medicine that Chiron, Venus has to offer at this time. In these dark and intense times, I think practicing love and kindness is a heroic act. And Chiron, his other role was the teacher of heroes. He taught people how to be heroic, how to tune into their most heroic parts and to live them out. And so with these sextiles, we can also think about what does it mean to be heroic in our communication? What does it mean to be heroic in our relationships? And I think the practice of compassion for ourselves and for others is a really heroic act in these times. And I think that this is a way of balancing out the hate and division that is so present these days. And this isn't a magic bullet, it's not going to fix everything. However, I think it does shift the way that we're able to treat ourselves. And in doing that, it shifts the way that we are able to treat others, and it sort of spreads out that way. And I think it also allows us to show up with greater compassion for ourselves and for those that we meet during these unstable times. And, a little bit of compassion can go a long way. And so another component of Chiron is they form a bridge between Saturn and Uranus. And Barbara Hand Clow wrote a book called The Rainbow Bridge, which really talks about Chiron's relationship to Saturn and Uranus, among other things. And Chiron's elliptical orbit takes them between the orbit of Saturn, which is the limit of what we know, and Uranus, which is the possibility of what could be. And this is important this week because both Mercury and Venus are going to be squaring Uranus later on this week, right after Uranus stations direct in Taurus. And so Venus and Mercury, or Mercury and Venus, move from the sextile to Chiron into a square with Uranus. And so we can think about Chiron's wisdom as a bridge or integration point between the known and the unknown, which is offered both to Mercury and to Venus as they move from this supportive sextile to Chiron into a hard aspect with Uranus, the planet of upheaval and sudden change later in the week. And I think feel like the medicine that we are able to gather and distill from these sextiles to Chiron will really help to prepare us for the unpredictable and potentially disruptive squares with Uranus later on in this week. And I don't know how it's going to go because with Uranus you have to expect the unexpected. I don't think it's going to be that challenging. However, being able to bring with us a sense of self-compassion, compassion for others, I think will really help to resource us if things are unpredictable or dysregulating, because Uranus can be a little like sudden and it can be too much too quickly, which can, kind of shake us at the core. And if we can hold compassion in our hearts for ourselves and for other people, I think it kind of buffers the sudden energy of Uranus in some ways, and it helps us to move from what was known into what could be in a much more skillful and gentle way. Which brings us to Thursday, February the 5th, when we have Mercury in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus, and this happens, a couple days after Uranus stations direct. And right after Mercury makes their sextile to Chiron. Let me pull this up on the chart so folks can see it. All right, so up here we have Mercury at 27 degrees of Aquarius, squaring Uranus right there, now direct at 27 degrees of Taurus. So, uh, one thing to think about, because both Mercury and Venus are going to be squaring Uranus this week. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, which is the sign that Uranus will enter into in April, and Venus is the ruler of the sign that Uranus is currently in. So there, Uranus is making these aspects with the ruler of the domain that they're in and the place that they are going. So this transit can bring a lot of mental stimulation and sometimes overstimulation. Mercury is like our nervous system, and Uranus can be a jolt of electricity, which can bring new inspiration and radical new thoughts. It can also kind of fry our synapses and leave us feeling a little burnt out, you know. And Mercury is also the way that we process information, and with the kind of electrical energy of Uranus, which comes kind of suddenly, it might be some information overload. So just watch out for that. It can make us feel a little manic or high strung. It can lead to overthinking or looping thoughts. So it is important to care for our nervous systems today and to consider the ways that we can channel or direct that electrical energy of Uranus so it doesn't overload these circuits. Mercury is a curious chap, and Uranus can really excite the mercurial curiosity. It's going to have us looking for excitement and novelty. There may be new information that comes to light or new ideas that emerge. It might be a good idea to keep a pen and paper nearby to sort of jot down some notes if you're into that kind of thing. If you're old-fashioned like me and you like writing things down. And ideas might appear and disappear kind of rapidly today. And the pace of today might feel kind of quick or even intense. So we also might find ourselves receiving some shocking information or information that shifts old forms and structures or causes a break with the status quo in some way. Mercury in Aquarius is already a bit radical, so it's kind of used to the out of the box thinking that Uranus can bring. And still, when structures shift, it can be a bit destabilizing. So just see if you can roll with it today and maybe cut back on caffeine. Maybe just notice if you're like doom scrolling and like trying to get as much information as you can. Ain't nothing wrong with it, but like, just be conscious, just be aware, and take time to care for your nervous system in the ways that you can. See if you can find ways to move some of that electrical energy through your system, either through writing or talking or even focusing on a project that requires some mental energy. And like this isn't a great transit for focus, but just having some place to discharge some of the information or ideas that are buzzing around in your brain might be really helpful. You might not want to be locked into finishing something, but you just want to like have something to move the energy through so it doesn't fry your system. And whenever we are dealing with, Uranus, I think about electricity. And when we are dealing with electricity, we need to think about grounding, which gives that electrical impulse a route to the earth in case something goes wrong. So it doesn't short circuit the whole system or throw a breaker or start a fire or something. We also want to think about insulation. How do we insulate the wires so that the energy can move cleanly through and not melt down or arc or deviate from its path, from the source to the work that is getting done, whether that work is lighting a light bulb or writing the great American novel? So how do we like kind of protect and direct that energy? With this square, there is a potential for extra energy to be moving through the system. So how do you insulate yourself so that energy can be handled, can be channeled to where it needs to go and where it can be of the most use? Or if it's too much, how do we give it a direct path to the earth where it can be discharged and reassimilated without causing too much disruption, like, or explosions, or minor meltdowns, or small fires. So this transit can be both inspiring and kind of overwhelming, and sometimes there is a thin line between those energies. So just consider the ways that you can work with that, and where might be a good place to direct that mental energy if it like starts bubbling up and feels a little chaotic. And also, breathing is cool. Aquarius is an air sign, so breath might be a way of kind of regulating things. And for the folks on Instagram, I'm gonna check the comments when I'm done because I don't know, I'm on a roll and I want to get through this. So if you want to be patient and stick around afterwards, I'll respond to the comments. So moving along to Friday, February the 6th, we have Mercury entering Pisces. So Mercury is in their fall in the Jupiter ruled sign of Pisces. I'm gonna just stop the share with the chart for that one because I'm sure you can imagine it's just Mercury entering into Pisces. Um, so Mercury is in their fall in the Jupiter ruled sign of Pisces. And a planet in its fall is laid low. It is kind of down in a hole. And when it uses its skill to try and climb its way out of the hole, it ends up just digging itself deeper, which feels really frustrating. So Mercury is about facts and information and gathering data and processing it and communicating it. And Mercury has a logic that just doesn't function right in Pisces. Pisces is too vast and diffuse for Mercury's logic to really penetrate. Pisces is kind of a foggy place, and Mercury kind of loses their train of thought there. They get distracted, they are lured off course by the siren song of Pisces, and they can get kind of lost. When they try and get back on track with facts and logic, it just doesn't work the same way in the poetry and romance of Pisces. It doesn't really care about logic or facts. Pisces wants things to sound good and to be enmeshed and all encompassing, which just confuses poor Mercury even more. And okay, I made this sound kind of bad, and a planet in its fall is debilitated, but everything has its resources, and the resources that we find in difficult situations actually can be incredibly valuable. When things come easy, they we get kind of lazy, but when we got to work for them, we really sharpen our abilities and our skills. And remember, Mercury is a guide and a messenger, and neither rain nor snow nor the fog of immutable water sign stays this courier from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Mercury is skilled at navigating through all types of terrain, physical, mental, emotional, whatever. And they tend to have a roundabout way of getting to where they need to go. And in Pisces, there can be more flowery and poetic language, which brings us to where we need to go. Maybe not with the sharp rationale of Mercury in Virgo, but with a expansive and descriptive quality that can help us to feel our way into the scene that is being created. Mercury in Pisces is making emotional connections and is creating a felt sense, which can be incredibly valuable. And just a heads up, Mercury entering Pisces means that they are nearing their retrograde station, which will occur on February the 25th at 22 degrees Pisces. So might want to just like be noting what's going on, how communication, how thoughts are feeling, over the next couple of weeks, because the things that start coming up as Mercury enters Pisces will come back around again when they station retrograde and move retrograde through this mutable water sign. So yeah, just maybe paying attention to the themes or symbols or ideas or interactions that are occurring over the next couple of weeks because, we're going to get a redo on all of that. And, we'll speak more about that when the Mercury retrograde gets closer. And just be aware that communication and the exchange of information may get a little foggy from now on. So really get creative about how you were able to exchange information and communicate what needs to be said. Which brings us to Sunday, February the 8th, and we have Venus in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus at 27 degrees and 28 arc minutes. And this will be the last transit of the week. Let me share this for the folks back home. We have Venus here. Next, calculate. Okay, there we go. We have Venus here at 27 degrees, making this red line hard square to Uranus over here at 27 degrees of Taurus. So this, all right. So again, Venus is the ruler of the sign that Uranus is currently in. So there is a sort of relationship between landlord and tenant, in some ways, and they are at cross purposes. A square is, two archetypes or two planets coming to a stop sign at the same time, and it's like, who's going to go first? Is it going to be the one that's like, I really value this and I love these things and I love these people, or is it the one that's like, yo, we got to just blow this all up. I want to be free. And love and relationship, there is like some commitment there, right? There is a tending to, there is a responsibility, and Uranus is like, I don't want any responsibility. Hell no. Like, I want to do what I want to do whenever I want to do it. And Venus likes fun and Venus likes pleasure. And so, they might go along with that, or Venus may want to like hold on to what's working and what they got and feel a little bit challenged as Uranus is like, come on, let's go, let's blow it up. And so, Venus deals with love and values and beauty, aesthetics. And Uranus is sort of trying to revolutionize old forms and old systems to uh, evoke something new, something closer to the imagined ideal. With this hard aspect, there can be feelings of boredom or noticing where things feel kind of stale in our lives. And Venus square Uranus wants some excitement, something to shake us out of the old, some new experience of beauty that helps us to feel more alive, some shift in the relational life that brings excitement, something that brings new energy into the system. And this doesn't mean that people are necessarily going to go through breakups, but it is an opportunity to notice where things have become maybe too fixed or automatic in our relationships. And maybe it's time to have conversations around our relationship ideals and what we would like it to look like, and what might need to shift or adjust to move closer to that idea. And is a chance to work with that and to shift the ways that we operate with each other, or at least, just try it out, try something new, spice it up a little bit. This transit is looking for some spontaneity and excitement. And this is a good day to have new experiences with the people that we love. Venus is also very social, so you might find yourself like talking to strangers or meeting different people. This is also a really good time to go on adventures with friends or partners, or on your own. Fuck it, take in some beauty, have a new experience, go do something out of the ordinary, look at art or go to a noise show, or feed Venus some like radical new forms of creativity and new aesthetic experiences, or try new sensual experiences like weird foods or like new smells. And Venus in Aquarius is already pretty out there. And the square to Uranus might push it to take just another step outside the box and to explore new forms of aesthetic pleasure or sensual joy. The challenge with this square is we may find ourselves feeling bored with life, and we don't want to just like blow things up because we're like, oh, this is boring. Like give it a couple days before you make any like rash decisions, unless it's like really the time, and then, more power to you. Um, Sometimes Uranus can be a little too sudden and it can feel a little dysregulating. And so, see if you can like sit with what comes up and see if you can, get some information about what might need to change or what old forms might need to shift to feel a little bit more free, to feel a little bit more authentic. We also might find ourselves kind of pushed outside of our comfort zone a little too quickly. So just be conscious of that and allow yourself to leave the noise show if the band is really annoying, you know what I'm saying? Or if the modern art is not your cup of tea, like you can go. you know. Don't get yourself locked into something that like doesn't feel good, because I think this is about expanding our sense of what we like, and to bring in new excitement, not putting ourselves in situations that feel uncomfortable or dysregulating. And so the idea with this transit is not to force ourselves to like things that we don't like, but to explore new forms of beauty, pleasure, and joy, and new ways that we can get our needs met in relationship. And with that, my friends, yeah, that is all the Astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's exciting edition of This Week in Space. Again, my name is Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a consulting astrologer and tarot reader. If you are interested in getting astrology reading or a tarot reading, you can hit me up on my website, campwizardcamp.com. There's a link in my bio, a link in the show notes. Yeah. Also, I do some astrological based coaching. If that is something that people are interested in, just hit me up and we can talk about it. And yeah. Oh, also, last thing, I'm taking next week off. Jonah needs a vacation. So, good luck out there, and I will see you in 2 weeks. But yeah, been going kind of hard in the paint, and could use a break for a minute. So, thank you for understanding, and for your patience. And yeah, I will see you all when I get back in 2 weeks. And I'm going to hang on the Instagram for a minute more and just answer some of the questions or respond to the comments. But yeah, till next time, my friends, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. And as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.